and welcome to Pastor Pete in his pajamas, where I tell you my favorite Bible stories while wearing my pajamas. Last week, we looked at how God led the Israelites through the Jordan River on dry land so that they could enter into the land that he had promised for them. Well, this week we're going to be taking a step back. In fact, we're going to be rewinding 40 years to begin looking at the leader that brought God's people into this promised land, a man named Joshua. Now, we know from Scripture that Joshua loved God with all of his heart, and he trusted him with all that he had. And I believe that by looking at Joshua, we can be encouraged to look for God even in these challenging times. So we're going to be opening up in our Bibles. Today we're going to be reading the Read With Me Bible, which, as you can see, is one of Shepherd's favorites. It's well worn. In Numbers 13 and 14, the story Exploring Canaan. Read along with me. Moses sent some men to check out the land of Canaan. He said, "See what the land is like. See whether the people are strong or weak. What kind of towns do they live in? How is the soil? Are there trees on it?" The men went and checked out the land. They cut off a branch that had grapes on it. 2 of them carried it on a pole between them. At the end of 40 days, the men returned. The men reported to Moses and Aaron. They said, "It really does have plenty of milk and honey, but the people are powerful. Their cities are very large. We can't attack those people. They are stronger than we are." Joshua and Caleb were 2 of the men who had checked out the land. They said, "The Lord is with us. Don't be afraid." That night, the people of Israel grumbled. "Why is the Lord bringing us to this land? We are going to be killed." The Lord replied, "Not all of you will enter the land. Caleb will enter it. So will Joshua. They are the only ones who will enter the land. I will bring your children in. As for you, you will die in the desert. For 40 years, you will suffer and wander." You see, God led the Israelites out of Egypt in a miraculous way, and he led them to this land that was bountiful, that was filled with milk and honey, that would be comfortable for them to live in. And Moses sent in these scouts or these spies to get the lay of the land, to figure out where they might go and settle. And the spies saw all of the magnificent things that this world had to offer, but they also saw that the people that lived there were big. They were intimidating. In fact, they might even be a little bit scary. And instead of dwelling on the positives, they focused instead on the negatives. And when they reported back to the Israelites, the rest of the people began to groan and grumble because they were caught up in their fears rather than trusting God. But you see, Joshua was unlike the rest of the Israelites. He saw the scary things, he saw the giants that lived there, but he chose to focus on the positives. He chose to trust that his God would do what he said he would. And so instead of grumbling, he encouraged the Israelites to embrace what God had promised. Well, we know that the Israelites didn't accept his message. And as a punishment, they wandered in the desert for 40 more years, and only Joshua and Caleb ended up entering into that promised land. One of Shepherd and I's favorite things to do is to lay out in the lawn and look up at the sky and stare at the clouds and pretend that each of those clouds is actually something much more. We stare up and we point them out and say, "Oh, that one looks like a dinosaur." Or "That one looks like a spaceship that's shooting across the sky." Perhaps that one is an elephant splashing around in the water. You see, they're just clouds. But when we use our imaginations, we can see something so much more? Well, right now, in the middle of this quarantine and the shelter in place, we are staring into what appears to be a dark storm cloud. And it's easy, just like the Israelites, to focus on the things that make us afraid, that cause us to worry and to be scared, and to assume that God is not present here. But instead, I want you to be like Joshua and look at the potential positives that could come from this. To begin looking at these clouds in your life and imagining that they are something much more. Perhaps looking at it and recognizing an opportunity to grow closer with siblings, to encourage a neighbor, an opportunity to get to know each other better as families, to play more board games. Maybe it's a chance for you to practice prayer as you slow down your life. Our challenge today is to be like Joshua, who recognized the scary things that stood before him, but chose, instead of dwelling on those, to hold true to the promises of God in his life. God is our provider, and he is always with us, and he will always stand by our side, even in the middle of a pandemic. Let's be like Joshua and trust in his provision.